Dumelang, good morning, goeiemorgen, lochane, molweni, sawubona. A very warm welcome to day 2 of the CESA Infrastructure Indaba 2021. My name is Refula Lisufi. I have been given 2 roles today. The first one being to stand in for our CEO, Mr. Chris Campbell, who is doing a sterling job at directing the program for the conference. He sends his apologies for not being here this morning, but he will be joining us after session 4, which is the transformation and development. And that is my day job for today, to facilitate that session. Now, for those of you who joined us yesterday, I'm sure you can agree that it was a great day, filled with insightful keynotes, thought-provoking panel discussions, and relevant and industry-leading topics of conversation. For any new attendees joining us today, welcome. And I can assure you that today's lineup will be no different. Over and above the havoc that COVID has caused globally in the economy, health, and in the livelihoods of our communities, COVID has also changed the way we work, meet, socialize, and do business. Gone are those days of waking up in a hotel room in order for you to go and join a conference and physically meet people. Not so long ago, I had the privilege of attending a virtual global conference, which was a very impressive platform with a virtual parking lot, virtual registration table outside a virtual building. And after the registration, you could go to the lobby and actually ask questions at a help desk. From there on, you could go to the different auditoriums and exhibition rooms, as well as meeting rooms. But this platform was not user-friendly, and I struggled for the 3 days that I was there to navigate and connect, although there was plenty of help. Maybe it didn't help that it was a global conference led by the Chinese. I hope that those who attended yesterday had a better experience on the platform than I did. And if not, please use the chat to say what you are struggling with, and our team will definitely guide you so that you can enjoy the experience. And for the benefit of those who could not join us yesterday, I'm going through the housekeeping rules just so that you can understand how we work. To make use of all the features that this virtual platform has to offer, we recommend that you use your laptop, not a tablet, so that you can really make the most of the interactive options like the comment sections and the Q&A feature. If you've connected using your phone or tablet, there's still time to log on with your computer. On the right-hand side of your screen, you'll see a small green button. If you click on it, you'll see the chat facility. Would love to see you really engaging with us as the day unfolds. So do keep the momentum going by commenting and asking lots of questions and comments and whatever else that you'd like to add on. It doesn't necessarily just have to be questions. We'll also continue with some networking at the end of the session. So please do stay for some virtual face-to-face chatting with the CESA team, our speakers, and our valued partners and exhibitors. The full sessions are being recorded, and we can share a full recording after the event. First and most importantly, a heartfelt thank you to our sponsors, which is the CIDB, Old Mutual, and Zutari. Make sure to visit them during the Indaba network and really use the opportunity to know what they do and how you can leverage on the services that they provide. We welcome you and all your representatives back to day 2 of the CESA Infrastructure Indaba, and thank you for joining us online today. It's not billable time, but we hope that the lineup will lead to growth and meaningful participation with clients and colleagues in the industry, a worthwhile investment. We have another full program, and we will kick off with a session on transformation and development. We'll then take a short break and return with a facilitated discussion on professionalism in the state and private sector. The session takes us right into a lunch break at 1 o'clock, and we return at 2 o'clock with the infrastructure project's impact on poverty reduction, employment creation, and closing the inequality gap. Like we did yesterday, we will have a lucky draw. So you better stay on after lunch. And like we do at every Indaba, we will have a presentation and a conference resolution by Mr. Sugian Pillay, our CESA president, before closing remarks as delivered by Mr. Chris Campbell. And then the conference program will conclude at just before 4 p.m. We look forward to an exciting day. I'd like to remind everyone to kindly please don't forget to post your comments and questions in the Q&A throughout the session in order for us to allow for an interactive and valuable engagements with our panelists. And please do join us on social media at hashtag CESA Indaba 2021. So go make a big fuss on social media so that people can join us and get to see what we do in our sector. Now I can step out of my CEO's shoes and do what I have been trained and been asked to do, which is to facilitate session 4 on transformation and development. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to take this opportunity to actually introduce myself, which is a first. But I'll give a brief bio of who I am. My name is Rifuleli Sufi. I'm the founding owner of Prana Consulting, a 100% owned, women-owned level 1 triple BEE civil engineering consulting firm, which has been in operation since 2021. I hold an MSc degree from Wits University in civil engineering, and I'm a registered professional civil engineer with 20 years of experience in geotechnical designs for dolomitic and non-dolomitic areas, and also pavement engineering. My experience also includes construction management for a range of private and public sector projects. We are currently involved in the development and commercialization of decentralized modular sanitation solutions, which is quite exciting and in line with the innovation and development, which we're going to be talking about more later. I'm also a board member at CESA, as well as the chairperson of the Transformation and Development Committee. Now, inequality in South Africa is well documented. And this is because we have inherited a country that is characterized by many years of unfair discrimination, with laws set up to systemically exclude certain groups which happen to represent the majority of our population, such as Blacks, such as women, people with disabilities, etc. The discriminatory measures elevated the socioeconomic status of the minority in our country at the expense of most of our Black people. Our countries also have high levels of unemployment, low levels of skill and education, and with the 4IR and all the changes that are happening in the technology space, we will be leaving a lot of people behind, driving them further into poverty and unemployment. We all feel the impacts of this inequality, irrespective of which side of the inequality line you stand. High levels of unemployment have led to poverty in most Black communities, and poverty has been linked to the high levels of crime and social unrest, both of which affect all South Africans. It therefore goes without saying that something needs to be done about this untransformed state that we find ourselves in. A quick definition of transformation. Transformation can be a marked change of a system in form, nature, or appearance. It can also mean a process by which one figure, expression, or function is converted into another one of a similar value. In South Africa, transformation has a particular meaning, which relates to the economic and political transformation of society and sector to move from a previously exclusive society to an inclusive one. Transformation at CESA is very important. It is so important that they found it crucial to set up a whole committee that looks at transformation matters. And the purpose and the role of this committee is to review, facilitate, and monitor transformation of the sector, to promote transformation as an ethical business practice and be able to monitor progress beyond the scorecard, to assist members to find credible alliance partners, to identify opportunities which can be driven on behalf of members that serve the long-term goal of developing future engineers and leaders in our industry, support sustainable BBBEE practices in the industry, and identify transformation initiatives which need to be driven through focus groups and establish such forums based on set goals and objectives. As a result, the committee has two working groups, one being the gender diversity and the other one technology and engineering innovation. Now, our government has pieces of legislation that address transformation, which includes the Employment Equity Act, the Skills Development Act, the Broad-Based Black Economic Act, as well as Promotion of Equality and the Prevention of Unfair Discrimination Act. At present, we have a better representation, actually, of previously disadvantaged groups being represented in government as opposed to in private sector. If we look at the composition of members at cabinet, if we look at representation at state-owned enterprises, we can actually see that some headway has actually been gained towards transformation. However, as I said, when we look at private sector, the picture is completely different. We have top management and C-suite positions which are still occupied by previously advantaged groups. The 2020 figures of CESA member firms show that males account for 77% of top and senior managers vis-a-vis females who only occupy 23%. From a skills perspective, according to Access 2020 annual report, of all our professionals, including engineers, technologists, certified engineers, and technicians, females contribute a mere 7.8%, with whites dominating at 81.8%. Looking at our candidate registration across all categories, we have 22% of females being candidates. And in that case, most of them are actually struggling to transition from being candidates to becoming professionally registered due to lack of training, experience, and exposure, which can be related back to the non-transformative nature of our sector. Whichever way you look at it, the numbers paint a very bleak picture and should stare at our moral obligations to want to see improvement and change. The numbers also represent a very skewed representation of our demographics. In addition, technology is another area of focus when it comes to transformation. The fourth industrial revolution represents a new era of innovation and technology, one that's enhancing human-machine relationships, unlocking new market opportunities, and fuels growth across global economies. With the advent of 4IR, we are concerned about the already high levels of unemployment, low literacy, and low levels of skills for the majority of our population in South Africa. SMMEs are still grappling with survival in an untransformed sector, and now to have to upskill and integrate technology in the way that they do business, which can sometimes be costly, might just lead to them being even further disadvantaged. In order to address these challenges, it is important to have a plan and a roadmap which will lead to a sustainable transformation. We first need to understand the barriers and challenges of the new cohort that should be coming through to fit in and take their rightful place at the transformation table. We need to provide them with support that they need to fast-track their development and capacity building. And it's crucial to monitor and report by tracking of targets and sustainability to make sure that we are actually achieving these targets. It's also very important for us to start working on a strong pipeline that will feed into the sector to ensure that we meet future skills that will be needed. Transformation needs to occur throughout the life cycle and value chain, from as early as childhood development to representation at top management and inclusion of businesses for women in the economy. To break the cycle of poverty, we need to implement youth development and employment interactions and interventions. including training opportunities, which will remove their current barriers to enter into the labor market and an apprenticeship. What we need to unpack today with our panel of esteemed panelists will touch on many of the aspects that I have just touched on. And we're hoping that we will unpack what the key drivers for transformation are, what transformation actually will look like after we've achieved it, and how do we actually get there to ensure that the sector is transformed. Can we actually afford for the status quo to continue and yet still be able to meet the sustainable development goals and national development plans? And also, what is the cost of not transforming? So without further ado, because I am not an expert on the subject, but that's why we've put together this panel, I'm going to call upon our first speaker, Ms. Renee Peterson. She is from SMAC, and she's also CESA's YPF chairperson for transformation, gender, and inclusion. Renee Peterson is the National Vice Chairperson of CESA's YPF. She's a civil technologist specializing in traffic and transportation engineering. Renee holds an M.Eng. Civil Engineering and has 7 years experience in construction, project management, and design. She's currently employed by SMAC South Africa. Over to you, Renee.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Rifilwe. Firstly, I would like to say thank you for the opportunity to speak and present at the 2021 Infrastructure Indaba. My topic today will cover transformation, gender and inclusion, and I have decided to explore the unconscious bias within the workspace. Before I get started, I would like to take this opportunity to thank all our annual sponsors as presented on the screen. Your contribution is truly appreciated because without it, events like this would not be possible. As I get started, I would like everyone to participate in a quick exercise. I'm going to ask you to close your eyes and take a deep breath. I'm going to present you with 3 scenarios and I want you to visualize yourself in them. So you're late to catch your flight, you rush to the boarding gate, you pass the security, and as you reach the door of the airplane, as it's about to close and you step into your seat, the pilot steps out of the cockpit to say hi. The plane lands, you're at your destination. You get off and you proceed to a local restaurant to enjoy dinner. You have the best meal of your life, and as you enjoy your meal, you look across to the table next to you and you see a couple celebrating their anniversary. The next morning, you go to the biggest engineering event of the year, and the CEO of an engineering consultant steps up to present the keynote address. Now, you should have a clear image of the journey in your mind. So I'm going to ask you to open your eyes. While constructing this mental image, did you visualize the pilot greeting you to be a person of color? Did you visualize the married couple sitting next to you to be 2 men? Did you visualize the CEO of the consulting engineering company to be a female? Answering no to one or all of these questions explain how unconscious biases are involuntarily formed. So to understand the topic, we need to understand what is unconscious bias. Unconscious bias is learned attitudes or stereotypes that exist in our subconscious and can involuntarily affect the way we think and act. These biases can also influence the way we make decisions. Many factors influence individuals being unconsciously biased, such as past experiences, the experiences of others, social and cultural norms, and what we are exposed to, such as media. For a moment, I want us to refer back to the slide where we answered yes and no to the various scenarios. The reason why one or all of your answers were no to the above questions is because your brain formulates images that are familiar to us. These automatic assumptions or acts can occur without really even thinking about the decision for an extended period. So I pose the question to you. How does unconscious bias affect us in the workplace, and does it place boundaries on gender, inclusion, and transformation? The first concept considered was the different roles of males and females in society and what was socially acceptable. Over the next two slides, I will look at examples of the roles of both males and females. When we refer back to the definition, I want us just to remember that the behaviors are linked. The snippet on the screen was found in a 1950s home economic textbook where it describes the way women had to conduct themselves to be socially accepted. Some of the roles listed included childcare, household chores, and preparing meals. Next, we look at the survey on the role of men. The survey conducted by the New York Times focused on men from different age groups and their willingness to participate in household chores. The survey found that men are less likely to participate in chores classified as women chores, namely childcare, household chores, and cooking, but more likely to participate in cleaning the yard or car upkeep. The graph illustrates that less than 10% are willing to contribute to household chores, while 60% are willing to work in the yard or clean their cars. The question is, does this spill over into the workplace? Do these learned behaviors determine who does the minutes in meetings and who manages the team? To further illustrate the influences of roles in the workplace, the wage pay gap concept will be used. Mind the gap. So how is the wage pay gap defined? A study by Wits University defined the gender wage gap as the difference between the average hourly median earning of a company for male and female employees. Statistics show that women on average can earn 34% less than their male counterparts in the same job. Further to that, CESA noted that for years, salaries have been the main source of income in South Africa and accounts for more than 70% of the overall income. When it comes to female earners, a study found that women actually receive lower rewards than men for educational qualifications. Why is this though? When irrespective of your gender, your university fees, student loans, and fees associated with obtaining your qualification is exactly the same. When looking at the data presented by CESA, the role between males and females looks similar. Whether they are single in the age group 18 to 34, married in the age group 35 to 59, being the head of the household, or the living arrangement status, it can be seen that the roles can be filled by both males and females. If we focus on the economically active category, who earns an income ages 18 to 34 and 35 to 59, we see similar trends between males and females. For example, 94.7% of males and 85.8% of females in the age categories 18 to 34 are single. Looking at the next category, marital status for males of 34.1% and for females 34.4%. Would these stats have been recorded similarly? Would a similar result have been recorded 50 years ago? Further to the previous graph, CESA shows that 6.1 million households, or 37.9% of households, are headed by women. When thinking of the ripple effect of the wage pay gap, it can be understood how, when women earn less, this continues to have an impact on the economy as well as on the household itself. When considering the number, it would be to the detriment of 40% of households in South Africa to earn less income just because the head of the house is a female. Lastly, we look at the gender and income gap and how it can influence the future of our country and its livelihoods. The future being the children who will later contribute to the economy. The last graph shows us the spread of living arrangements across the board, namely with both parents, with one parent, or with neither. When looking at the last data set, we see that the majority of kids, 43.1%, live with their mothers only. And the second highest rating is with kids living with neither of the parents, which equates to 33.8%. So, with roles being interchangeable, why the gap? As mentioned at the start of my presentation, in the beginning, unconscious bias is a learned attitude or stereotype that exists in our subconscious. So how do we unlearn them to drive inclusion, diversity, and transformation around us? We unlearn them by working at the inclusion and transformation like we would at any problem we are looking to solve. Breaking them down into various steps, like the model presented on the screen, into manageable tasks to reach a goal of workplace inclusion and transformation. The model on the screen gives us key aspects that can be implemented at the workplace easily without any cost or very little cost. A few that stood out for me was numbers 2, 4, 5, 8, and 10, where we should be fostering environments of inclusion, starting with the decision makers, in changing our own behavior and engaging with cultural influences and tracking the results and correcting the course if and when required. So in closing, my question to you today is, are you willing to change your behavior to foster an environment of transformation and inclusion? Thank you.
Renee, thank you so much for that insightful presentation. Sure, unconscious biases. We all have them, and it's going to take an honest look at ourselves. It's going to require a high EQ, not IQ, for us to be able to look at ourselves internally and honestly to see what our biases are and work on actually turning them around so that we can meet the transformation agenda and be able to turn ourselves and our communities around. But thank you so much. We truly, truly appreciate that. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of questions around how you identify the unbiased consciences if they are unconscious, the biased consciences. We're going to move on to our second speaker, session 4.2. I really have nothing but admiration for her. And when it came to the question of transformation, we really couldn't think of anything or anyone better to actually speak about transformation. But her qualifications, she has a BSc from Wits University. She's got a business management with UNISA. She's got a GDE in property management and property law strategy with Wits University, and strategy in innovation with TAC executive education in Indaba, and Internet of Things, IoT, with Massachusetts Institute of Technology, as well as a business analytics with University of Pennsylvania. Her board history, she has been the deputy president of the National Society of Black Engineers and a council member of the Engineering Council of South Africa. She previously served on the board of Spectrum Valuations Company and Gauteng Partnership Fund, which is the GPF. She's currently the chairperson of the National Electronic and Media Institute of South Africa, NAMISA. She will be speaking to us on transformation in progress. Over to you, Lebo.
Thank you so much, Ms. Lesufi. It's a pleasure for me to be speaking with everyone this morning. I think the issue of transformation remains a challenge to all of us, big or small. So I am sharing today just our experience as IX engineers and just the various forms of transformation that we have undergone over the last few years. So I'm gonna share my screen. So in 2001, we became KV3 engineers until 2011. When Wally Parsons acquired KV3 engineers in 2011, KV3 no longer existed. It now changed name to Wally Parsons. That journey started in 2011 until 2016, when in 2016, we took over the Wally Parsons RSA infrastructure business and rebranded it into IX Engineers, and also took over the Black Jones Engineers Consulting business, which started in 2007 until 2016. And we rebranded those partial mergers into IX Engineers. So IX Engineers actually is turning 5 in 2 days. We're very proud of the journey that we've gone through over the 5 years, and it hasn't been easy, but it's been worthwhile for all of us. So if we look at an overview of IX, we are a level 1 BE company. We currently employ just the 300 is now around 250. We're multidisciplinary. We're 51% Black owned. We're technology driven, and we have over 35% Black women ownership. I'll expand on that on the next slide. And we have about 10 offices in the country. So in terms of specific ownership structure, we are 51.04% Black owned, and we 38.27% Black women owned. And in terms of our management, so we couldn't find a picture of how KB3 looked like prior to the Worley acquisition. So, but it was predominantly male. There wasn't a single executive at the time, a female executive at the time. And this basically just illustrates that it was a men's world. And how we look now, this is the executive team of IX. We currently actually 50-50. We 50% Black executives and 50% non-Black. And what I will share with you on the next slide is that actually transformation is a moving target. So this picture looked a little bit different about 4 months ago. And through the various changes that we've gone through, it now looks like this. So basically how we looked about 6 months ago is that we had 2 other women. So we had 3 female representation at Exco, and we only had 3 white males. And that picture has now changed 6 months later to 4 white males and 4 Black executives. So it's just one of the challenges and continuous improvements that organizations have to keep up with, because it's never a constant achievement. You can never say, okay, I'm done with this part, my executive team is good, what's next? You always have to go back whenever there's changes. As we know, people are creatures of movement, so people will come and go, and that then changes the structure of the organization. So transformation, also what we've learned is that through the various transformation journeys we've undergone, there is a lot of culture confusion that takes place, because moving from an organization that had a certain culture and merging into one that has a completely different culture that is dominating, you find that there is a transition phase where employees are a bit confused with regards to actually what is the culture of the organization. And we found that we had to continuously work on culture development and cultivate the culture that we wanted as IX. And we then came up with values which are really the anchor of our culture development, and our values that anchors us are futuristic, respect and integrity. We believe we must be playful at work. Work must not always be serious. Let's have fun. And then there must be participation, and everyone must be allowed to participate. So the culture development then became a very strong focus for us, seeing that there has been quite a number of changes that happened and caused a lot of I don't want to say uncertainty, but you always want to feel at home in a workplace. You don't want to feel like you are visiting your work. So to create that, we saw that it requires quite a number of things. So our culture development and cultivation is ongoing, and we realize that, you know, creating an organizational culture that is flexible with emphasis on collaboration and co-creating, it's something that is not always common in every organization. So we, as IX, defined what culture we wanted, and what culture we wanted to live as a team, not only a few people living the culture and certain people deciding that, okay, no, this doesn't really align with me or resonate with me. I will therefore subscribe to a certain way of doing things. So we also make sure that in our culture programs, we invited everyone to contribute towards defining what culture we should have as an organization. And we're seeing that it's really a key factor of transformation. And we also decided that we want a culture that encourages innovation, playfulness, and at the same time, delivering consistent customer-focused results. That as much as we can play and have fun and be innovative, let's be consistent in our delivery to our customers. And also we all agree that we want a culture that differentiates IX solutions and teams from the competition. At the end of the day, you are all apples, but there are apples that have different colors or different textures, different taste. We can't all be the same. So we're working quite consistently in defining what differentiates us from our competitors, and, you know, building on that and amplifying that to make sure that if you are interact with an IX person, you should not experience a different, you should not have a different experience, but have a consistent experience no matter where you are, whether you're in Kimberley, you are in Pretoria or Cape Town, you should have a consistent experience. And also a culture that gives the employees an opportunity to have an input on the type of work environment they want to create. So we constantly asking, you know, everyone within the organization for ideas for anything, whatever we want to do. We always go to employees, say, okay, this is what we want to do. What do you think? How can we do it? And we're seeing that it creates that culture of participation and making employees feel that they are heard and that they are appreciated, and their views and inputs are valuable to the organization. And what we've seen is, as well, is that for transformation to be successful, the advocated values and behaviors must become prevalent throughout the organization. So that is the consistency I was referring to, that, you know, you cannot have a different experience when you are in PE at an IX office or engaging with an IX person. And that requires really consistent effort. And what we've learned as well, I mean, I was fortunate to attend a GE annual event that they normally have in the US. And, you know, we interacted with the CEO, the group CEO of General Electric. And, you know, we're asking him questions that, you know, GE, as, I mean, at the time, GE was employing about 330,000 people across the world. And
sorry to interrupt, Ms. Lishabani, if you could kindly wrap up in the coming 2 minutes, please. We're over our time, allocated time.
No problem. Thank you very much. How do you ensure that you consistently have the culture that you want as an organization? And his answer was that, you know, one thing that is constant in life is change. So make sure that you create an environment that makes people be become used to change. So that's one way of doing that. So one of the things that we're doing as part of our transformation is bursaries and mentorships. We assist tertiary students, we provide internships. We also have a formalized in-house program. We're also very passionate about supply development. Every year we choose different companies that we support. These are just some of the companies that we supported in this year. And we're also very passionate about giving back. So this year we're giving back to school children. We're giving up about 350 school children shoes and school bags. We also identified in each office a children's home that we support on an annual basis. We do various things for them, including painting their classrooms and buying them food, toys, whatever it is that they need. And we also have a grocery fund for COVID victims. So we buy groceries for people that were severely affected by the impact of COVID. And we've also renovated a number of facilities for township entrepreneurs. So these are normally vendors and such entrepreneurs. And this is my last slide, Refilwe. This is just some of the key learnings throughout our transformation. Is that transformation is continuous, it's a moving target, remain focused despite the setbacks. The plan doesn't always work. So you need to be agile in what you plan to do and be intentional. That's one thing we've learned as well, that you need to be certain what culture you want and take time, and you require everything takes time. You need to be patient throughout your transformation journey. And culture cultivation needs to be consistent, just so that people understand what kind of organization they're in. Thank you very much. I appreciate the time, CESA and the sponsors. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Leshabane. You started your talk by saying that transformation remains a challenge. And even with you as the leader, as being a Black woman leading an organization, that realization that it's still a challenge shows that, you know, with the rest of member firms who do not have such representation, it definitely is a big challenge. And congratulations on the achievements of your organization, IX, throughout all its transitions, and we wish you guys all the best moving forward. You've rightfully said that transformation is a moving target. You can't say that you've achieved it now and then you sit and relax, because things could change this afternoon. So you need to consistently have a succession plan in mind and build a pipeline to make sure that you always meet your transformation targets. I like the fact that you say that you're driving transformation through values, which define what your culture is. And you've got a very inclusive approach where you do not just see your staff as your staff, but they are part of a big family. And it's only through consultation with them that you can actually fashion the culture of a company. And we also note all that you're doing from a CSI perspective. That is a huge contribution and a step forward with regards to transformation in this sector. So thank you so very much for that sharing. Next up, we're going to go into section 4.3 with Ms. Lindiwe Catherine Madonsela, who's Manager for Advocacy, Education and Awareness and BBBEE Commission Transformation. Oh, she's going to be talking about transformation and economic empowerment. Ms. Lindiwe joined the BBBEE space in 2011 with the policy unit in the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition, and later she joined the regulator in the BBBEE Commission in 2016. A warm welcome to you, Ms. Lindiwe.
No, thank you very much, Refilwe, and thank you to CESA for inviting us to share our perspective on aspects of transformation. So I will share my presentation to kickstart. So thank you. So when we talk about transformation, for us, what is important is that transformation is a societal issue. Transformation requires both ourselves within the public sector as well as the private sector to really think hard about it and to also start to institutionalize the different initiatives in terms of what is it that we do on a day-to-day basis. So it requires the manner in which we operate our businesses to slightly change to be able to factor in the aspects of transformation. So what is it that we as the BBBE Commission that we do? Our role is a regulatory role. Generally, when you have certain pieces of legislation, there will also be a regulator who has to oversee that particular piece of legislation is actually being implemented. And at the same time, to monitor and track whether the compliance is according to what the framework has provided for. So our jurisdiction is throughout South Africa, and we normally drive two forms of strategies. We have a compliance strategy as well as an enforcement strategy. Under our compliance strategy, what we thrive to do is to make sure that we assist entities with proper implementation of the Broad-Based Black Economic Empowerment Act, as well as the various codes of good practice that are then put together pursuant to that particular legislation. And then also what we also do there is to provide advisory services. And currently all our advisory services are at no cost. So in those advisory services, we look at initiatives that entities want to put together in ensuring that there is transformation, and we advise them whether those initiatives will indeed drive transformation according to how the legislation has provided for. And then the second strategy is our enforcement strategy. Now, under enforcement strategy, that is where we do our investigation work. Our investigation work is twofold. We either investigate pursuant to a formal complaint that has been lodged, or we investigate out of our own accord. What we do on a day-to-day basis, we track the developments around transformation, all the announcements, all the deals that have been concluded. So as part of that monitoring, we're also able to pick up some non-conformances with the legislation, and then also try to assist within those particular aspects. So in executing our mandate as a regulator, there are a few services that we offer to ensure that when we talk about transformation, we do actually see that state of transformation. So firstly, we've spoken about the lodgement of complaints, that complaints can be lodged with us. And we do also receive and allow what we call anonymous complaints or the submission of tip-offs, because we do generally find that a whole lot of information or a whole lot of cases that eventually we would be investigating would be emanating from tip-offs. And then we've spoken about the advisory services, and we also do provide what we call clarifications, which is to assist on the proper interpretation of the legislation. We do note that is a very technical legislation, and once you miss the interpretation that is to be applied, you may find yourself not being compliant without any foul intention, but in terms of how probably a structure is being implemented. And then also we maintain a register of major BBBE transactions. These are transactions that are of the value of 25 million and above. These are ownership transactions. So what we also see in that space, we do sometimes note voluntary registration of transaction below 25 million, which to us as a regulator, we really applaud the parties, because to us, it shows a sense of transparency and wanting to ensure that whatever that transaction has been concluded, it is aligned to the legislation. And we also do issue what we call practice guides and advisory and notes or advisory instructions on certain matters that we would have picked up. And we do also conduct site visits. Site visit that we conduct, it's either in relation to an investigation that is pending, or it's in relation to a tip-off that we have received, or it's also in relation to compliance reports that different entities like your entities or listed on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange need to be submitting to us on an annual basis. Now, when we talk about now transformation, and particularly within the construction sector, which is also where we find the engineering sector playing a role, for us as the regulator, we need to look at that within the context of the construction sector code, which does also cover the built environment professionals. So the reason why this is also important to us, that we just don't monitor whether entities are achieving the targets that they have set, but we're also ensuring that there is proper and real economic transformation. Because the important thing that we need to understand is that one is able to be achieving a good level from a point recognition point of view, but that may not necessarily be now translating to real economic transformation, wherein we do see the lives of enterprises changing, wherein we see the introduction of new entrants within the sector, wherein we see the participation and or the growth of your small and medium-sized enterprises. So it's important that when you look around economic transformation, we are more around outcome-based. We need to see the status quo changing. And the construction sector still remains very relevant and important in a sense that it supports and contributes positively to the 2020 vision, which is embedded in the National Development Plan, because it does also talk about aspects around infrastructure development. And then most key, it is also a sector that has been identified to drive the economic recovery plan as we try to resuscitate the economy to make sure that we address the challenges that we've experienced as a country based on the COVID-19 pandemic. And then also key for us as the regulator is because of the role that government plays in this particular sector. When you look at the nature of investments that are being facilitated through infrastructural support, and also when you look at the labor-intensive production, we do note that when you look at the various statistics, even the statistics that are released by Stats SA, there is a bit of a drop, but nonetheless, the sector does remain critical. And then similarly, when we talk about transformation, it's also key that we do share some statistics. As the Commission, on an annual basis, we issue what we call the National Status and Trends on BBBE report. And this report, we compile it based on the source of information that we receive. For example, we receive compliance report from your JSE listed entities. We receive compliance reports from organs of state and public entities. And we also use the information within what we call our BBBE certificate portal. That is a system where each and every accredited verification agency is required to load all the certificates that they issue. Now, once we look at that information, we analyze it, and we are able then to issue the trends on BBBE. So, but what importance when we talk about trying to even talk about economic empowerment for us as a regulator, the concern is around the low levels of submission of the compliance reports. I mean, when you look at the 2017 journey, excuse me, until the 2020 year, you will see that the numbers have been dropping, both in the public sector as well as the private sector. I mean, when you look at the 2019, we were at 42% by JSE entities, and in 2020, it dropped to 33%. With organs of state and public entities, it's even a very bleak scenario because you had 15% in 2019 and then 9% in 2020. So that it's a challenge because we are not actually able to give a full picture of the state of transformation as a country. And then also when you begin to move into the different elements of ownership, what you begin to see firstly is that when you talk about Black ownership and also when you talk about Black women ownership, generally there's a drop. When you look at 2019, it was sitting at 31%. Now we've dropped by 4% to 28%. But now when you look at the different categories, one will see that there is improvement. But when you do an overall, you see that there is a drop, and that it has been a concern from year in, year out, that we see the level of Black ownership dropping. And then we still see ownership transactions being concluded, which then begs one to really ask some hard questions around why is it that we see all of these initiatives being announced, being implemented, but we don't really see the actual impact, which is what the legislation seeks to achieve. And again, aspects around management control, the overall there, There's also a drop when you look at management control, but averagely it shows an increase. But when you look at JSE entities, it has moved from 44% to 28%. Organs of state, they're the ones who seem to be doing fairly well around that aspect, even though there was a slight drop between the 2019 and the 2020 figures. Then again, a question would be, why is it that we don't see management transforming? How are we bringing in Black people within the different structures of management, really allowing those opportunities for Black people to take advantage of? Do we have proper mentoring programs? Do we have proper succession planning? What is it that we're actually doing? Those are the questions that one is asking. And you generally see the trend with the other elements, which is your skills development, that yes, entities are implementing, but when you look at the spend that they have to spend, they are not really fully implementing 100% of that. We are seeing that overall at 60% that is being implemented was 49% in 2019. However, the challenge is that why is it that we are not 100% implementing these initiatives? And then one may ask the issue around COVID-19, but even when you look at the trends from 2017, you will see that that has been a sort of a norm that we don't fully achieve what is it that we are supposed to be implementing. Now, again, enterprise and supply development, which is a critical element if we are going to make sure that we drive and we empower and we grow your small and medium-sized enterprises. On average there, you also see that we are sitting at 61%, which is similar to skills development. And generally, entities seem to be doing well around the socio-economic development element. Now, specifically, when we look at your Triple B and your construction sector, what we try to do is to give a picture in terms of from 2017 to 2020, looking at the performance of the different elements. Now, when you look at the different elements, you will see that around ownership, there has been what we call progression within the sector. This is one of the sectors that when you unpack its ownership, you will see that it has been progressing. We have been seeing a high up movement year in, year out, but we still need to be improving around Black women ownership, because when you look at 2019 and 2020, yes, overall Black ownership, there has been an increase, but there has been a 1.9% drop in terms of the Black women ownership. And also when you look at management control, we have been seeing a steady movement of entities, but however, there was a huge drop between 2017 and 2018, but then it picked up again in 2019 and it picked up again in 2020 with 63%. And on skills development, there has been a very positive movement around the spending around the different skills initiative. And the same with regard to your enterprise and supply development. We've been sitting currently in 2020 on 90.2%, and then which is a drop actually of about 6% when you look at the 2019 year. However, on socio-economic development, it has been positive throughout. However, this is not without a challenge when we look at matters that are reported to us as the regulator. And then also when we look at the challenges that we identify based on what we call possible misrepresentation of Triple B matters that are also reported to the Triple B Commission. So in this last slide, what is it that we are seeing within this particular sector? What we are seeing is the non-aligned ownership structures. I mean, from the transactions that are registered with the Commission, the ownership or the construction-specific transactions, we have noted that those initiatives or vehicles that have been presented are not really aligned to what the legislation requires. And then its implementation will make sure that the picture around the transformation of a sector as a whole will not necessarily change, because when we talk about this, we are moving it from individual institutions, but then we are looking at the overall sector, that it should not just be company A and company B transforming, but the sector as a whole needs to transform. Hence why there's a specific sector code that the sector initiated to literally drive transformation within that sector. And we've also seen non-compliance with the definition of Black people. I mean, of recent, in the past week as a commission, we've published a case that we started to investigate since 2020, wherein in this particular case, we have noted that a company, Vicky Ade Consulting, was claiming to be 100% Black owned and a level 1, but that was misrepresentation, because when you looked at the actual ownership percentage, one of the shareholders did not qualify to be a Black person according to what the definition has said. Now, when we have such instances on the ground, it may demonstrate that there is actual transformation. But however, when you start to unpack, you realize that we are not actually making strides. We're just camouflaging in terms of transformation. And again, we started to pick up a whole lot of fraudulent certificate and sworn affidavits being presented by the different procurement officers in relation to construction-based entities with a certificate. Either the certificate were fraudulently obtained, they were not issued by the accredited verification agencies. Sworn affidavits the status of an EME or a QSE there, it is not based on the latest financials. There's manipulation of financial information so that one continues to qualify as an ME and they use a sworn affidavit as opposed to being subjected to an investigation. And then also we've seen an increased number of formal complaints being lodged by construction-based participants. I mean, when you look at 2016 up until the 28th of September 2021, we have received 93 complaints relating to the construction sector, and we've received 86 complaints relating to the engineering sector. Now, when you look at the previous slide, when we're sharing what we call the performance, now this becomes a dent in terms of that, to say we may be having that, but it may not necessarily be translating to actual empowerment. And around skills development and enterprise and supply development, we note expenditure dumping. There's no proper planning. Monies are being spent 2 months or the last month prior to the close of financial year, but it does not really yield the results that we want to see. And then lastly, we've seen that we don't see the different institutions within the different companies within the sector submitting their compliance reports to the sector council. That is the Construction Sector Council. The companies are required on an annual basis to submit their BE performance to the sector council so that they can be a specific sectoral report in terms of transformation. So we would plead with companies that let us make sure that we comply with what the legislation requires us to do so that we can properly monitor and see a better improvement of the state of transformation within the sector. So this then brings us to the end of our presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Lindiwe. We're really grateful for that very in-depth presentation on triple BEE and the construction sector, the challenges that are being faced, fronting, that's what we call it in a layman's term. You've put it into many different manners and ways in which it's achieved. You've mentioned that the Commission has an advisory service and would like to encourage participants and our member firms to actually use it. It's for free. And yeah, we thank you for everything that you guys are doing with regards to ensuring that transformation is achieved through the triple BEE. I'm sure you're going to have a lot of questions that are going to be coming during our Q&A session. But thank you so much. And now we are going to move to our fourth speaker, Mr. Benny Foster, the Regional Director, Rail Business Unit of Hatch. And he'll be talking on technology aiding consulting engineering business. Benny has over 26 years experience in the rail industry. He started his career with Transnet and spent 11 years with the then Spoornet division, where he worked in technical operating, strategic planning, process improvement, and spent his last 4 years on the coal line, where he was responsible for capacity planning, motivations for capital projects, business cases, and implementation of efficiency improvement projects onto the coal export line to Richards Bay. He worked in the banking sector for 4.5 years, where he was the head of business efficiency improvement until that focused in internal business processes and staffing planning models for the various businesses units in ABSA. He worked for 3 years with a medium-sized rail engineer company before he joined the Hatch Rail team that was established in 2008. Here he was involved in various rail studies and execution projects, and also played a key role in the HMG JV that was responsible for mega projects in Transnet. Because of the global footprint of Hatch, Benny was involved in various international projects in Canada, Australia, Brazil, Sierra Leone, Burkina Faso, Ghana, Madagascar, Mozambique, Namibia, Baffin Island, Brisbane, and Melbourne. He is passionate about rail and values his colleagues that he is working with. Thank you so much, and over to you.
Thank you, Lindiwe, and thank you for the invitation. It is really a pleasure to present to you this morning, and I hope I can give you some ideas in terms of transformation in the technology side, and specifically the subject that I want to cover this morning is technology aiding consulting engineers going forward. So starting off, I would like to just have 1 or 2 definitions of technology transformation, and these are 1 or 2 of them, but it's just to set the scene. One of the definitions is the complete overhaul of the organization's technology systems, encompassing network architecture, hardware, software, and all the data that is stored and accessed and by people. And also the processes in technology that is involved in the business in the business. There's another definition is digital transformation, the process of using digital technologies to create new or modify existing business processes, the culture and the customer experience to meet changing business environment and the market requirements. I think in terms of as we embarked into the COVID pandemic, it had a lot of impact on the way we do things and the way our systems are structured. And the idea is to just take you through within Hatch what transformation we have done technology-wise to ensure that we are capable of going through and connecting on a global basis during the COVID period, as well as setting up for the future. So a bit of business context. If you look at this pyramid, it really, a lot of companies has got this as the building blocks, values. We talked about the values earlier in presentations, the company organization values, vision, mission, then the strategic objectives and the actions and plans within an organization. Now that doesn't really change over time. I mean, the strategic objectives and market trends will change. But I think the key thing that I want to highlight here is, how do you adapt and change, through different market environments and through the pandemic to make sure that you're still relevant and that you can still, play a big role in the industry. So as you look at the pyramid, there's a lot of inspirational stuff, coming more strategically, moving down to tactical and operational levels. And what I want to go through is say, well, how do we look at, the tactical and operational level in terms of ensuring that the company is still relevant going forward. So basically, I want to talk through the end-to-end business process, and here we're looking at the impact of COVID and how did this change in our organization, the pandemic that has caught a lot of companies off guard, depending on how you set up with manual processes and not all digital equipment and technology to interface. And I think COVID has really forced a lot of people to think differently about how we work, how we engage with people, and how we do our work. And I think maybe global companies has had advantage of setting this up because of the global footprint. A lot of this technology has already been in place and being used, but I think for the smaller companies, that was really a challenge, and I think it just places new challenges on the table. I think the integration of systems is becoming more critical to ensure that smooth business processes and operations are run, and design tools are becoming more and more critical to go into digital design and the BIM 7D space. And the ability of companies to do designs across this business process is really so important. And so what I've highlighted here is just the whole process from the beginning, from the client interface, and engagement and opportunities, and pursuits engagement, as well as the risk analysis and risk that we do before we actually go and engage with projects. The next phase in the project is looking at business forecast. What is the current workload and anticipated future work that you're chasing, and how do you plan your resources to be agile and available depending on the work that comes out, and how do you plan resources for upcoming work and balancing capacity between existing and new work. Then the third block really talks about the actual design, whether it's feasibility or pre-feasibility or detailed design, about how do you do designs using technology, how do you make sure that there's reviews taking place on digital platforms, and what innovation can you bring to the client to make their lives easier and to leverage off technology to either save time or costs. And also the review during the design review phase is how do you use technology to do the reviews and get sign off on documentation and designs. And then moving over to the project implementation, it's really about the triangle about time, cost, and quality. That is key. And how do you make sure that those three elements are kept in balance? So your systems in terms of monitoring, control of cost, control of timelines, and then also making sure that the quality that you're delivering is good. And then the next phase is really looking at operations and the maintenance of the infrastructure that you've installed. Make sure that there's a handover to the owner. There's well-defined maintenance practices and asset renewal over the life of the asset. And then eventually, the closeout, that could be, for the project or phase of the project, and the document and the handover of these documents, in electronic format, which would make document management and configuration management for the client so much easier. So it's really about, how do you change from a lot of manual, paper-driven processes to make sure that there's an integrated enterprise platform where your staff can interface and plan and engage internally as well as with the client to ensure that designs are done electronically and that you can do that remotely. How do you look at the support tools and techniques and equipment that you need to have to enable that to happen, and the tools that the staff would have, be able to work remotely from home or from the office, or a mixture or a blend of that. And then obviously, the skills that and skills development of our people, that needs to support the transformation and the transition. I think that is really one of the key things is, in the consulting business, we don't have any assets of that other than our people. So then looking at, the business systems and supporting and maybe delving into that, I think, service delivery during, COVID, all, based on a global capability, focus on, what are the type of technology that we're looking at when we look at client engagement. So we see, client relationship management systems where we, have information around the client and the strategic direction and focus areas, and you need to, log, monitor, report progress on that, as well as do maintenance on the client information or add new clients to that database. So that technology is quite important, and to have that on an integrated platform. Already spoken about just the business forecast. What's the detail of your existing projects? How does the potential new projects come in, and how do you predict what type of resources and the skills that you would need, and also partnering, if you don't have some of those skills, partnering with business partners, and how we grow that to make sure that that our capabilities and tools and forecasting are done. We move on to the design side. I think the use of BIM in these design tools and new technology is going to be critical differentiator going forward. I think integrated design views of complex multiple discipline projects is becoming more and more prevalent, and the ability to do individual designs on, let's say, the civil or structural, rail, or different disciplines can do their designs in isolation. But how do you integrate and bring that into one design space, and the 3D design space is really so powerful, to look at clash detection of different designs, and making sure that while you're designing, that you identify potential hiccups and challenges that you might face in that design space. Then moving into the implementation phase is really about digital drawings that we could share with the contractors, instead of paper-based systems, which is easier to share and comment and edit. And if there's any design refinements, that can be done electronically and quickly shared with people, either on tablets on site. And there's a lot of good technology that we have developed that we can interface with the client as well as the contractors there. And there's a lot of digital information that can be exchanged from electronic designs, that, for instance, on civil graders and that you can load onto the equipment, and they can automatically set blade levels and that to make sure that the right levels and material is then sourced, and also the engineering design and construction is done. And then lastly, the closeout of the documentation is to have electronic information available, digital as-built information to the client that they can then use and store electronically, and then also the handover so that they can do their configuration management once the project is done. Then lastly, just to reflect on some of the value to clients to having the technology transformation into on a digital platform. I think it provides the ability to execute projects remotely or globally, with pulling in a lot of resources across the globe at different locations. And I think COVID has really opened up a lot of the mindset there to be able to do that. I think the other key thing is integrated documentation management, internally for the design purposes, but also sharing with clients, and going through the review process is so much easier if you can share digitally and ask the client to review digitally, and give comments on the documents. And then if you look at relating to the skills development of staff, I think there's a lot of standards and codes and specifications that people are exposed to, when you do global projects and in different areas. And that skills development is also key to staff to expand the knowledge of the standards and processes. And I think the other thing is also to engage with people from different cultures, with different work methods and processes. Being able to share the designs, and engaging with people that has got different views or different processes has been a key learning for us on multiple projects that we do over the globe. And you realize that there are differences, but they're not so much different. And these engagements needs to happen in connecting with people on a personal level. And then also digital design reviews and tools and processes enable quick and effective project delivery, and saves the client money and time. And then lastly, the technology enables optimization of design, project designs and execution cost, as well as the digital collaboration enables people to work across multiple time zones, and from the home or the office space, and you can maximize the use of the 24 hours if you've got staff working in different time zones. And that's it from me on my slides. Hopefully that's given you an idea of how we can aid technology aiding us in engineering designs. Thank you, Refilwe.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Benny, for shedding light on how technology can aid us in the consulting sector. And thanks for showing us how it's done at Hatch, because most definitely COVID has catapulted us into a world of technology, a world that most of us were definitely not ready for. What I'm taking away is that it's very important to automate our processes, integration, designs, all across our business processes. And yeah, we look forward to a space where we're going to be capacitating our people, hopefully, and not leaving anyone behind, because that's always the risk with implementation of technology, to ensure that we have a good balance between the inclusion of technology, but also looking at where we are as a country with regards to our low levels of skills and unemployment. Thank you so much for that sharing. And now we're going to move on to our last speaker, which is Mr. John Burney, who's the principal at HATC. He'll be speaking to us on technology and innovation, application and innovation engineering services. John is the Global Director of Asset Intelligence Systems and part of Hatch Digital. He has over 30 years of global experience in utilities sectors in the multi-discipline delivery of digital control and information systems across many hardware and software platforms. John has the systems integration expertise required to support asset performance management systems, APMs, enterprise asset management systems, EAM, energy management systems, EMIS, including capital planning, strategy, and risk management. John has strategic business development initiatives with measurable success, both within and outside of Hatch, in the digital transformations, and will guide the team assembled for success implementation of the EAMS opportunity. Over to you, John.
Great. Thank you very much. I'm in Canada, so it's a little late. It's a little dark out here. So I've really enjoyed the conversations about transformation and the context of transformation. It's not just about technologies. It is about the people. It is about the processes. And I've really enjoyed some of the speakers today and the information that we've collected here today. It's quite enjoyable. I will share my screen. Go one second. My name is John Burney. I'm the Global Director of Asset Intelligence within Hatch as part of our Hatch Digital Group. Again, the conversation is around technology. Benny set the stage well. There are processes that are being transformed. The way people interface with those technologies, the user experience, that's being transformed. And processes, the way we're delivering these larger projects to clients is changing. What's being done now currently is not working. There's been many challenges in the delivery of larger infrastructure initiatives, right from the planning stages through construction into operational and maintenance. And the design environments haven't been integrated. There were many different sources of data sets. There was a lack of interdisciplinary coordination. The ability for teams to work together off a common set of data has always been a challenge. Configuration management has been ad hoc, so as designs change, some of that information is lost throughout the design process. In that construction phase, because these solution sets aren't supporting the capture of requirements very well, often some of the regulatory requirements are not captured, resulting in some significant costs to some of these projects. The interface between the stakeholders and the design teams has been a challenge. Interfaces between the design teams and the construction teams has been a challenge. Interfaces between the multiple different construction teams has been a challenge for these projects, and there's many examples where projects go off track based on the lack of information, the quality information, the source of the information, and who has the information at the right time. That's what information management is all about. It's the right information to the right people at the right time. And it has to include the information required at that operational maintenance level. So you need to engage operational folks early in the delivery periods, in the design phases. They have to help define the asset information requirements, the project requirements, because it is them that's getting the information at handover, and they have different drivers than the design and the build teams. And if they're engaged earlier, you can avoid some of those tensions that happen between contractors and the build teams and your operational teams. Why it's not working, again, sometimes the contractual setup is adversarial. It's a challenge to coordinate your DB contractors with your civil contractors. There's multiple DB contractors with multiple contributors to this project. So how do you coordinate those commercially, and how do you coordinate the information that all of those groups need? There's certainly a lack of standardization in the industry that needs to be addressed, and projects are still tending towards that siloed groupings of information that they share between each other. They're not looking at this as a life cycle approach to delivery of projects. How is information management? Is there a single source of the truth? Is everybody working from the same set of information? That's always been a challenge. And why is it really not working? Quite honestly, is everyone sees the problem differently. The folks that started off in the feasibility phase, the economic analysis, they have a vision of how this was to be executed. It's not necessarily articulated well to the design teams or the construction teams. The construction folks are busy, especially civil contractors. They have budgets to work to, timelines to work to. They can't often wait for some of the information. Is there good design collaboration between your system suppliers and the other folks that are contributing to the design? How are they coordinating the designs and the information? Everybody has their vision of the project, and it's a challenge to see the project as a whole. So how do you see both the elephant and its components, right? Everybody sees it different. So what we're seeing and how Hatch is approaching this is there's an adoption of this new global information management framework. It's originally started as BIM, but it's not just about BIM anymore. originally started as a British standard, moved into 19650, and that information management framework called 19650 has been adopted in pretty much globally. It's certainly here in North America. We see it in Australia. We are starting to see it deployed in South Africa. It is about information management for the entire asset lifecycle. So it's information management, but with that context of the organization and asset management and that handover of what's being designed and built to an operated environment. We've structured our approach to this after a systems engineering approach to the delivery of projects. So we're looking at standards like ISO 15288 as the guiding framework. It influences and is the guiding principles around your information management programs, but we ensure that we've captured the requirements of ISO 9650, which are how you manage the information throughout the asset lifecycle. But we're also sufficing in making sure that we're addressing all of the requirements and the components of ISO 55000, which is our asset management framework that we need to follow. There's other standards that are built into that, like we're looking at 4157 for the way you name buildings, the way you name rooms, the way you name floors. It has to follow and be structured after all of these ISO standards. And ultimately, you're trying to suffice your operational management requirements and your quality requirements of a business. So we ensure that throughout the delivery period and into the service period, we will be meeting the requirements of ISO standards like 9001 or 14000. And key to this global information management framework is this federated space and a common data environment where the collaboration happens. So vendors are putting information into that common data environment. Designers, different design firms are building their models and moving their models into a federated space for that design collaboration, for the clash detections, for the BIM use cases. So, Benny made a great example of 7D. It's based off of that common data environment. You're populating models, making intelligent models, but from a common data source and in a federated space where everybody is interactive so that you don't lose information. You want economic information layered in. How we approach that is we'll take an ArcGIS 3D platform, embed that information, and we layer models on top of that so you can see your environmental and sustainability information and your economic impact of your design while you're doing the design. It has great value. And by following and building the solution sets around this information management framework, you can build in workflows, automated and regulated. So you're actually building in some governance into workflows and processes. That will help on the quality side, it helps on the economic side. We've deployed a solution. We have a platform as a service that we use within Hatch to support some of our clients. But it is not just one piece of software. It's not a solution. It's a stack of technologies. So smaller organizations can take the same approach. If you have that concept of following that information management framework, you can use many different tools to achieve the same goals. How we look at this is with that systems engineering approach. We look at those requirements gathering activities, but they're being captured and digitally connected into the actual 3D model, into those BIM environments, into those design environments. We look and manage configuration management within those environments because designs will change and often you don't know what's going to be the design at the end of the day. So you need to control and manage the configurations as you build out this information. And effectively what you're doing is building a project information model as the project starts to unfold. And once you've built that project information model with the information from vendors, as you've captured all your requirements, as you start doing your 3D modeling and your design efforts, you can then add some intelligence to those endeavors. So you can start doing constructability planning by adding 4D elements to your 3D modeling efforts. You can start adding cost information into your models, so you can start doing cost analysis based on your constructability. You can do a lot of what-if planning scenarios based off that information. And ideally, you're moving it towards your 60-year handover. You're starting to populate asset management solutions and asset performance solutions and building management solutions early in the design phase, so that it's not an onerous handover. It's not a siloed event where information is handed over into the operational phase. You want to start doing it early, and these kind of solutions, this platform lets you do that. It also suffices that systems engineering approach, because you want to validate and verify that the requirements you've defined were designed to those requirements, that it was actually built to those designs, and you test and ensure that the requirements were met and that they're connected, and you understand any impact of change on the development of your deliverables. So by digitally connecting the requirements that you gathered to the actual deliverables that are generated, anytime you change a requirement, you can quickly see what impact that change is going to have on a project. And if you start that early, you can see the change of the different configurations. What impact is that change or that configuration going to have on an overall project? So by deploying these digital solutions, this information management framework early, you start to gain those kind of real reporting and forecasting and analysis value drivers out of projects. As this information is all collected, it's moving and growing and building, and we change this definition. It's as it starts to move over towards the service period, it's actually becoming your asset information model. And again, these are some terms that are defined by 19650 and are part of that information management framework. You know, and as you build and collect all those digital assets throughout the delivery period and into the service period, you can then start to add intelligence to that, start doing analytics on some of those data sets, do some simulations and visualizations of those digital assets that have been created throughout the project. And by adding intelligence to those digital assets, you are building digital twins. And it's this approach, this information management framework approach to delivery projects, that we're really be able to pull some value out of these large infrastructure projects, maintain costs, maintain schedule. Again, it's not just about technology, it is about people and processes. Our approach to this is you deploy a platform and a stack of solutions, but along with that has to come that supporting engineering services or coordination services. There's a function of trying to coordinate the information between the multiple parties. So trying to coordinate information between your civil contractor and your system suppliers, between your different stakeholders, your authorities, your regulators, your inspectors, needs that digital systems engineering coordination role. There's somebody that needs to be there helping manage the information, making sure that information is being put correctly, that it's being used properly, that the right information is being delivered to the right people at the right time. It takes that combined effort to deliver this. And you can look at it as a point solution, individual opportunities throughout the project. We look at it as a holistic approach for a project, but we're also engaging at an enterprise level where there's many different projects going on. We're deploying that same philosophy, that same platform as a service, and engaging many different projects within that same application and delivering enterprise transformation services with the technology. And that's my conversation for today.
Thank you so much, John. I should have greeted you properly and said good evening, and thank you for joining us.
No worries.
There's certainly a disconnect between client and the design team and the construction team. You know, all the ability to and to operate. It is a big challenge. Coordination side approach speak of is interest, and also our inability to get a project over its whole lives. So much for sharing Hedge's digital solution, but money. And interest is the common data environment information that you spoke about, where every collaborated and connected, and the space that you spoke about. I'm not in South Africa. You can tell us about that in the Q&A session. A lot of new words and concepts, and building a digital twin is one of them. And you're right, processes as well as bringing that client. So thank you so much for your contribution. Now move into our Q&A. 14 minutes left. I'd like to call back all our speakers, please. And Q box, and I'd like to encourage everyone to post your question. As for Lindiwe, it says BE fronting is fraud. What can you refer to, and what was the?
Okay, no, thank you very much for the question. So when you look at matters that can be reported to the Commission, it's matters that pertain to non-compliance of any of the elements that you will find under the Construction Sector Code. So let's make an example. When you talk about ownership and you've got a Black people who says we are holding 30% in this company, but we are restricted from participating in the decision-making structures. You are not attending shareholders meetings, you don't have access to any documentation, or you're just a director and you don't have access to any documentation. So those are some of the matters that we look into, and then also matters that says, okay, company A was awarded a contract, but their B credentials are actually based on false information. So that is also type of information or a matter that we look into. So when we investigate matters, there are matters that we investigate and we can finalize them by issuing what we call recommendations, meaning that there could be aspects that are recommended by the responding party to put in place, such as ensuring that Black people participate in decision-making, or payment of money that maybe as dividends that were withheld and they were not being paid for the number of years that Black people have been shareholders. And there are some cases wherein we can make findings without remedial recommendations. So each matter is looked into based on its own merits. Then you do also have matters that are then referred for prosecution. We refer them to SABS and the relevant unit within SABS and also the NPA. And there are matters that are concluded based on alternative dispute resolution that the parties concluded. Now, the case that we shared earlier on, which is the Vicky Ade consulting company, part of the recommendation was that they must withdraw themselves from the government contracts that they have, and then they have committed to doing that. And they've also committed to cancelling their own grading with the CIBD. So part of our work then will be to monitor that those things, they actually do take place. Thank you very much.
Just a quick follow-up question on that. Do you think that the Triple BEE Act is an effective tool to achieve transformation?
Yes, I believe that it's an effective tool to achieve transformation, and it has a specific role to play. You do have other pieces of legislation that also plays a role within the bigger themes of economic transformation. You do have your employment equity, and you do have your preferential procurement laws that seeks to drive issues around preferential procurement. So it's one of those pieces of framework that plays its own role. However, when you look at aspects around fronting and so forth, one may lose the encouragement that comes with the legislation. And we believe that the existence of a regulator has really changed the landscape, because we were able to address some of the practices that existed, and it became the norm from 2003, 2007 up until 2016 when the regulator came into being. Yet, yes, it took time to get used to the fact that you have a regulator who has to do this, but we believe that the existence of the regulator has assisted with regard to accelerating transformation. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Lindiwe. And Ms. Lishabane, a question for you. In the sector that we operate in, there is a serious skills gap, which then leads to making it difficult for EE targets to be met. When you source in your recruitment processes, how difficult do you find it to find people with the relevant skills to be able to put into your top management?
It's a very good question, and it's quite a challenge actually, especially around the specialist area. We find it really difficult to recruit highly specialized skills or personnel. So yeah, it really takes time. Sometimes it takes us as long as a year to find a particular individual. Sometimes we don't find them. We just have to not comply with our EE targets because we just can't find the right person we need for that particular position. So yeah, it's a challenge.
Mm-hmm. And any ideas on what can be done by the sector, by the CETAs, any of the institutions that contribute towards the pipeline? Any suggestions?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's a role that we must all play, because creating a skill pipeline, it's not only for one organization. As we know, as I said, people are creatures of movement. People will move from IX to another consultant and to another consultant. So we all need to play a role in creating the skills that we need, especially on specialist skills. So what we're doing is that we're pairing up our highly skilled people that are reaching retirement age with more middle skilled individuals so that they can learn that particular skills. Especially, I'll give you an example around a wastewater treatment specialist who has experience in process engineering. So it's a highly specialized skill, and a lot of our clients will say we want somebody that has over 10 years experience in wastewater treatment process design, and those people are really so rare. So what we're doing, like around similar shortage of skill, is pairing up our. So we've got quite a lot of mature engineers that are almost reaching retirement or are in retirement. So we do the skills transfer program quite intentionally into a larger group, so that it's not only to one person, and if anything happens to that person, then we back to basics. So yeah, that's the role I believe we should all play.
Okay, that's great. Thank you so much. You're right. Some of these skills are like unicorns.
Yes.
They just don't exist.
Yeah.
And then a question for Renee. The unconscious biases that you mentioned. If someone is not even aware of their biases, how can you encourage them to actually begin to realize that they do have those biases and help them with shifting them? Because I think that the realization that someone actually has a problem or a challenge is the beginning of resolving that problem. So how do we approach this with regards to unconscious biases?
I definitely think that given where we're moving to, we have to approach the person and have an open conversation about it, because it might be that the person doesn't know that they're doing it, or they're so used to doing it and nobody has spoken to them about it that it becomes normal. So I think moving forward, we definitely need to just engage and approach the person and speak to them about it, because I think that would be the best, instead of sitting in your office or then just deciding to move companies if it doesn't go your way.
Okay, thank you so much. And a question for Benny. Can you recall a time when Hatch was manual, like no automation, no IT, and what actually triggered the catalyst that got Hatch to actually want to move into being more technologically inclined? And how was it, or easy was it for you to get who had been working prior to adjust to the new way of doing things?
So, were you asking me the question?
Yes, yes. So do you recall a time when manual and figured yes, yeah.
I think, Hatch as a global company has always, been, had the ability to share and work digitally. But it's probably about 5-6 years back that we still had some, drawing and design reviews that we did manually. I mean, you print out these big A0 drawings, you lay them on the table and say, guys, go and review and do your signatures and do your markups. And
hey, Benny, we actually had a process where we had to take markers and color the lines, and yes, we checked it. Somebody else rechecked it, right? We had those processes only 5 years ago.
Absolutely, and then you leave the papers on the drawings on the desk, and and you follow up and say there's 5 people that had to review, and then you go back and have a look, and there's 3 people that still hasn't reviewed it. And I think that really triggered, our thoughts to say there must be more effective ways. I mean, to be a paperless office, in all those drawings and stacks of papers that you then mark up, and then you just give that back to the draftsman. He then lays out this big A0 and try and check and see how everything has been checked, and that he's updated that, and then somebody else comes back again and checks again that he has updated it. So, I mean, the whole, we're using, different tools to do the digital review, and I'm sure some of the other people around the call is also doing that digitally, where you've got audit trails of that. It's quick, it's push emails where you say, listen, you need to review this by end of tomorrow. And if you don't, you get a reminder. So, there's a lot of that has really, dropped the penny, and I think that's why a lot of other integrated stuff, not just on the design, but on the overall project life cycle, that we've decided to go that route, and I think it's really paying dividends.
That's good to hear. Sure, 5 years ago, So John, with regards to the Global Information Management Framework, do you know what the cost is of setting up such a solution in order for firms to improve their efficiency?
Oh, honestly, it can be right-sized for organizations. So we've been able to stand up our digital project delivery environment for smaller projects in the 250 to 300,000 range. We can actually work on smaller projects. It is a platform that can grow. You turn on the modules that you need, you build the size of it based on the amount of data that you're going to need and collect. So it can be right-sized. But a good example is, say, one of our very large infrastructure projects here in North America, in the $40 billion range is the capex for that project. Standing up the entire digital solution for a say 7 to 8 year design life cycle for that project is in the orders of 10 millions, not hundreds of millions, right? So that's the kind of scale that those kind of solutions can see. So from $500,000 all the way up to 25 million is the range of costs that you'll see for those kinds of projects. But as a percentage of the overall capex, it really is quite small. And what you get from taking this approach by standing up these solutions, engaging this kind of digital project delivery, the value that we can pull out of reduced engineering time, reduced searches for information, better governance and workflow and control, better revision control, easier and more manageable data handover into operations. All of that time savings and resource savings and cost savings is significantly less than the cost of deploying the solution sets. And we're seeing IIRs and returns on investments of, you know, an IRR of 120%. So
Sure.
the costs, benefits, the value we can pull out of projects is significant, from small projects all the way to large projects.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, John. I'm going to give everyone maybe 30 seconds just to give me parting shots. We'll start with Benny. What's your parting shot for today?
I think very informative. I think, you know, the important to balance, you know, the way we transform, you know, with people, making a difference. I think it's great to see how many women are on this session specifically, you know, that are in key leader positions. It's really encouraging, and it's so great to see and the value that you bring to the table through the conference. And then the mix, I mean, the mix of with people, the importance of people and how you mix that with technology, and to learn about how different companies are transforming has been very informative and very valuable to me. Thank you.
Thanks, Benny. Renee?
I think for me, it's been amazing actually to just be part of this. And I think the one thing that I would take away is what Lebo said about transformation being a moving target. And I definitely think it's something that as YPs we can implement and actually focus on in improving our working environments, because obviously going forward, it's our futures and the people who come after us. It's our responsibility to affect that transformation. So yes, thank you for the opportunity.
You're welcome, thanks. John, your parting shot?
I'm going to try to blend both of those responses. It is about the technology, the people, and the processes, and we see a great range of people at this conference. We're at the beginning of this digital transformation effort at Hatch, and I see this beginning across many different organizations. And having folks like yourselves and the younger generation come in now, it's opening up opportunities that weren't there before. Everybody's on an equal footing. Everybody has opportunity to dive in and really drive this forward. And the adoption of some of this learning around people is a big part of this transformation effort.
Thank you so much, John. And Lindiwe?
No, thank you very much. For me, my parting shot will be to say transformation is a journey. I think we need to embrace it and be able to understand that it's one day at a time, but the impact will be seen. We must not cut corners, because eventually cutting corners becomes costly, not only to the agenda of transformation, but to the business itself. So let us embrace it and then do access the services that the Commission offers. We currently are not charging, so you can walk through our offices, you can contact us, you can email us. We will be able to assist you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lindiwe. And last but not least, Ms. Lishabane?
Ms. Lesufi. So this has been a great morning for me. I've learned a lot from everyone. I think my parting shot is that women are important in this industry, and actually research has proven that the more you add women to a team, the more effective the team became. However, once the women dominate the team, the effectiveness drops. So you need a great balance between males and females to have
old and young too.
To have a really effective team. So let's work towards that balance, and that's my parting shot to the entire construction industry, that let's work towards the balance. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. That's very enlightening. I wasn't aware that there's a certain ratio that if crossed, it becomes ineffective. And thank you so much for sharing that. Guys, I think we all agree that transformation makes for a good business case. There's actually a saying in Pedi which says that it takes a village to raise a child. But in our case, it's going to take a collective effort, both from the public and the private sector, for us to change the course of where the ship that is our sector is heading. I hope that you all found the session informative and practical. And apologies to those whose questions we couldn't get through to. We just ran out of time. And I'd like to give my sincere gratitude to our panelists and our participants. I thank you for your time and your informative interactions during the sessions. Let's turn our talk, whatever was discussed today, into action so that we can improve our careers and our professions and our businesses. And I think we're going to have a break now. And after this, I am stepping down and I'm handing back to Chris Campbell, who will take the reins after the break. Thank you so much.